إن الله ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شيئا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نظير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نظير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير وأسروا قولكم واجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور أمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاصبا فستعلمون كيف نظير ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبض ما يمسكوهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم إن أمسك رزقه بل لجوا في عتو ونفور أفمن يمشي مكبا على وجهه أهدى أمن يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم قل هو الذي أنشأكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين فلما رأوا زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين صدق الله العلي العظيم رحم الله من قرأ سورة مباركة الفاتحة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وظل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحتك العصام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك واستشفو بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توضعني شكرا وأن تلهمني ذكرا اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متضلل خاشع متضرع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بكسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاكته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتي. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائه ساطرا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيره. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرعت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فاده من البلاء أقلت وكم من إثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء الجميل لست أحلى له نشرت. اللهم عظم بلائي وأحفظت بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نحوي بعد آمالي وخضعت للدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي يا سيدي. فأسألك لعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما ابتلعت عليه من سري ولا تؤاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رعوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي ومولاي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تذين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعد أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا هجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تغسيلي وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مكرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد فرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي حبني لابتداء كرمك والسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج بي لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تباعد من عدنيت. أو تشرد من عاويته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك الصادقا وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعا، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان التعبد كطائطا، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، ألا أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثوه، يسير بقاؤه، قصير مدته، فكيف احتمال لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهلي، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الظليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أذج، وأبكي لعليم العذاب وشدته عمل طول البلاء ومدته، فلئن سيرتني في العقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وحبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك، أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي أفوك. فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأذجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج العاملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكينك عليك بكاء الفاكدين، ولو نادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين. يا غاية آمال العارفين ويا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين، أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وضاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج معمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك ورعفتك ورحمتك، أم كيف تعلمه النار وهو يعمل فضلك ورحمتك، أم كيف يهرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانا، أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفا، أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا، أم كيف تسجنه زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربا، أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها. هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاهدك وقضيت به من إخلاد مواندك، لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأن تجل الثناء فقلت مبتدعا، وتطولت بالإنعام متقرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي، فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تحب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته، وكل ذنب أذنبته، وكل قبيح أسررته، وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته، أخفيته أو أظهرته، وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني، وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جواره، وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فضلته أو بر نشرته أو رزق بسطته أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك ركي، يا من بيده ناسيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمولا وبخدمتك موصولا، وأعمالي إنك مقبولا، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها بردا واحدا، وهالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولين، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، قو على خدمتك جوارهين، واشدد على العزيمة جوانهين، وحبلي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرها إليها في ميادين السابقين، وأسري إليك في المبادرين، وأشتاق إلى في القربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك ذنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فقد، واجعلني من أحسد عبيدك نسيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، وعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لحجاب، وقلبي بحبك مطيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني أثرتي واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بإبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة، فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تفتع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاهه البقاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. سورة الفاتحة.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Sayyid Hasan, Rizvi, respected elders, dearest brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jamia wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumin listed on the screen, as well as all other marhumin. Surah Al-Mubarak al-Fatiha. Dua Shfa Memories is requested for all those who need here and elsewhere, as well as those listed on the screen. Let us recite together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Ya Allah. Let us now invite Sayyid Hasan Rizvi to please come forward for tonight's Majalis. Wa Muhammad wa Muhammad salawat. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا والنبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We've got quite a few questions on Slido, so let's get started with that, inshallah. First one, somebody is
Well, they're saying difference between raffle and lottery. I'm assuming the question is, what is the difference between raffle and lottery? So, in terms of the way the English terms are used, at least in this country, a raffle normally is when everybody has a sort of equal chance, and some one or two or multiple winners will be taken out, right, from all these tickets, things like that. The way that the lotteries actually takes place in U.S. at least is there is actually no guaranteed winner, right? So everybody's, for example, picking numbers or playing these games, but there does not have to be a guaranteed winner there. In terms of the ahkam, we've talked about it, I think, a few different times. Both of them technically can be haram. Lottery very specifically is haram. With raffle, as we mentioned, if the niyyah is that you're donating to a worthy cause and you just so happen to get a raffle ticket there, then it's fine. If your niyyat is to actually buy a ticket to get a prize or to get that prize, then it is considered gambling and you cannot engage in that action. Okay. Next one is, if you get challenged and if it happens, you will be gifted $10, is it fine? So, yes, pretty much yes. I mean, assuming that the challenge is not something haram, then in most circumstances, as long as it's not in the form of gambling, right? If the challenge is, hey, if you do this, then I'll, whatever, you sink this basket, I'll give you $10. If you don't sink it, I get $10. No, that's gambling, that's not allowed. But if it's a one-way transaction, pretty much, if you say, okay, look, if you make this three-pointer, I'll give you $10, and that's it, then you're allowed to do that, right? There's no problem there. There's a technical discussion in fiqh, but technically what you're doing is you're hiring somebody for a job, right? So this would fall under the fiqh of ijara. You're basically telling the person, I'm hiring you, your job is to score a three-pointer. If you're successful, here's the amount that I'm going to pay you. That's the legal discussion behind what's there. And yeah, there's more like ahkam related to that, which I guess it's not super interesting, but I think it's more than enough. So yeah, technically, if somebody challenges you, or they're hiring you to do that thing and they give you $10, then yeah, it would be okay. Again, just make sure it's something that's safe, it makes sense. Hopefully it's not too foolish. Yeah, that should be it. Okay, next one is, do we believe in ancestors for Islam? So I saw this before. I don't understand what the question is. Do we believe in ancestors? Unless they meant another word. We do believe them because without your ancestors, you wouldn't exist. So yeah, we believe that ancestors are there. A person has to maybe rephrase the question or reframe it because I don't know what that means exactly. Now, these last two I'll mention, and then we'll probably move on. So what is the Islamic perspective on Putin's niece dying? So this is a very specific type of question, but this has to do with current political affairs and what's going on with Trump and his relationship with the Kremlin and internal stuff. Putin's niece is this term that was used for this individual who was apparently coordinating between Trump and the Kremlin or something like that. I'm not going to go into that. There's really no Islamic perspective necessarily. Whatever there is about this, we'll mention a little bit in the actual lecture tonight, inshallah. But in terms of specific stuff, there's no real, unless there's a specific question that you're trying to ask, you can re-ask that. But to just kind of give a thing of Islamic perspective on a person dying, I mean, like we said, the only thing that we have in recent news is when a zalim dies, and sometimes people come out and say, oh, you shouldn't be happy when somebody dies. No, you can be happy when a zalim dies. It's okay. That's a good thing to do, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And definitely we do not want to be sending out messages of condolences and praising people who shouldn't be praised. But I think we finished that topic a long time ago. We don't have to talk about that. And the last one here, which again will relate to our actual discussion, is you mentioned that hijrah, migration, must be made for the right reasons, i.e., qurbatan ilallah, closest to Allah, fi sabilillah. Considering our current situation and moving to Project Orange, is that considered a form of hijrah? If so, how do we ensure that it is for the best reasons? So this is a good question. Obviously, because physically moving from one building to another, then we've talked about that, right? Physical movement in and of itself may not mean anything. But we talked about in those few lectures about the different ways and niyats and intentions that one has to have while they're moving. And this will be the subject for our discussion tonight, inshallah. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, the person was, these two questions that came up, right, about this issue of hijrah, this topic of U.S. politics, right, about Putin's niece, right, this term that's used. Obviously, people are still thinking about what's going on in Iran. People are asking questions, what's happening there, what's the real story? There's obviously a lot of local politics we're worried about, which inshallah, tomorrow in the second khutbah, there's a new topic regarding what's happening in Dearborn that I think we need to discuss. But there's always a lot of things that are going on. And sometimes we're looking for very specific, precise types of analyses, like, what do we do here? What do we do here? What do we do here? And it's coming from, and it stems from a good place. But beyond that, I think there's a general type of advice or perspective that you and I should have as we're approaching these issues, which will be beneficial, whether it's for a local community issue here, whether it's something elsewhere in the country, whether it's affecting other, Muslim communities, Shia communities, maybe it's an international issue, whatever it is, there's ways that we can actually learn and benefit from it. And there's a way that we should be approaching it. So over here, I wanted to, just for tonight, because, I know on Thursday nights, normally we've had various different series. And to be honest, I haven't thought of a new one to start yet. So just because these questions came up on Slido, I'm going with this topic for now. Until, let's say, somebody gives a good suggestion, or I can think of something else on my own. But something, nothing, I have had no divine nor satanic inspiration yet about a new topic to start, so I'll have to wait for either of those, inshallah. So for tonight, I want to focus on this one famous narration, very beautiful one from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Where he's reported to have said, "As-Sa'id man wu'idha bighayri." That as-Sa'id, a person who's fortunate or happy, is somebody who gets wu'idha, who takes advice, who takes lessons, who learns bighayrihi, from or through others, through other things, whether it's other people, other events, anything. So now you can see how this is related to our topic, right? So the Prophet is saying, if you want happiness, one of the ways you can get that, a truly happy person, is somebody who's really just taking lessons constantly from all different perspectives. So there's a lot of different commentaries on this hadith. So I wanted to focus on some of the lessons that come from two of our ulama, one that passed away many years ago, and then one that is still alive. So in one of our works, Rabi-ul-Awwal, which was written by the father of Allama Majlisi. So everybody knows Allama Majlisi, rahmatullah alayh, the author of compiler of Bihar al-Anwar and many other works. His father is Muhammad Taqi al-Majlisi, sometimes called al-Majlisi al-Awwal, and sometimes his son is called Majlisi Athani, right, the second one. So Muhammad Taqi Majlisi has his book, Rawdatul-Muttaqeen, where he comments on and offers tafsir and commentary on many different narrations. One of these is this narration. So he gives a few different pieces of insight. One of them, which is the main one that he focuses on, is the idea of learning from the sins, the ma'asiyah, and the mistakes of other people. The Prophet's saying generally, take lessons. Over here he says, look, learn from the iqab, uqubat, and azab that other people and other communities have gone through, so you don't make the same mistakes yourself. Very simple piece of advice, but there's a deeper meaning to it. And he focuses on this reasoning. He says, we know that in the Quran, Allah says, لَن تَجِدَ لِسُنَّةِ اللَّهِ تَبْدِيلًا. You will never ever find a change in Allah's sunnah. Meaning Allah has His own, as we call SOP, standard operating procedure. Allah works the exact same way every single time. The system of metaphysical and physical cause and effect is always going to be here, right? In astronomy or cosmology, they have this idea called the cosmological principle, which is something that they say is necessary for the Big Bang to have occurred. Which basically, in a nutshell, just means that the universe, no matter where you observe it, at what time, what place, whatever, it always plays fair. It plays by the same rules. So, for example, law or theory of gravity will work here just like it'll work in any other part of the universe. If that cosmological principle is not there, then there's no way we can know about what's going to happen in the universe. Because somebody could say, hey, maybe gravity works like this in our universe or in this part of the cosmos, but maybe over there or maybe at the beginning of the Big Bang it was different. Well, if we have that, then we're never going to know anything, right? Because it'll always be, well, what if this? What if that? What if this? So the cosmological principle is that, look, everybody has to play by the same physical laws throughout time and space. Or a simple analogy is, in the same way when you're playing a sport, the job of the ref is basically to make sure that everybody who's playing the exact same sport in the same game is playing playing by the same rules. In the middle of soccer, if somebody just randomly grabs the ball, who's not the goalie, and runs around with it, if the ref is like, oh, it's okay, let him do it. Like, no, that's not the way you play. We don't let people cheat like that. Everybody needs to play by the same rules. Okay. So over here, ulama, or the first Majlisi is saying, Allah's sunnat doesn't change. There's principles that He has left behind for us. You look all throughout the Quran, it's the exact same thing. And that's why all these stories are mentioned over and over again. That's why some, maybe one idea, right, to go through some of these Quranic stories of the prophets of the past, to see this qawm went through this issue. Make sure you don't get into the same issue. I'll share one example which may be beneficial if you recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This will actually relate to tomorrow night, or tomorrow, the khutbah, second khutbah as well. But what's on our minds right now are the same issues to some degree as the people of Lut were dealing with, right? Qawm Lut. Or as it's put in Latin English, Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Those same issues, those issues are increasing more and more and more every single day. I think you all know what I'm talking about. Now, what's interesting is that most people they know of the actual problems of that people, what Qawm Lut, what was getting involved, the haram that was happening. They don't know actually how it started off. What actually was, they say the straw that broke the camel's back. What was the initial issue, the spiritual issue that was happening to that community that led them to this sort of vile, disgusting behavior that they were engaging in, right? That allowed them to, almost perform these heinous acts to a prophet and his family. So what happened? So there's many different things that are explained in the riwayat. I'll just share one of the explanations that's given. So they actually, in one of the riwayat, right? A lot of these stories, the deeper parts of the stories, which are not mentioned in the Quran, we get from the riwayat. So in the riwayat, it's mentioned that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, that initial people, Qawm Lut, as we now refer them to as, they were actually one of the best communities of their time. The most muttaqi, the most pious, the most charitable, everything. They were the best of the best. What they would end up doing is, they were, according to some versions of the story, is that they were, they would put in a lot of effort in their work. So they would, till and farm and crop, raise, have all these crops. And when people would pass by, and people, usually that in that context, people would come by. Sometimes they would run out of resources, water, food, things like that. So they would be a very generous people. So they would end up, here, let's take care of you. Why don't you stay with us? We'll give you food and water and lodging and all these things. So they were known for that stuff. What ended up happening then over time is this idea of greed or materialism got into the people. Or how we would now frame it in modern day terms as workaholism. And they became workaholics. It initially started from a good perspective. Right? Like, we want to help people. We want to gain more to take care of our own families and help people who are coming by. But they spent way too much time on the fields. The men, who are usually the ones who are out there working, they would have to actually travel a bit outside of the city to do their main sort of harvesting. So they were outside of their home, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks. They would be there longer and longer, right? They would extend their stay more and more and more. So the women would be at home with no men, basically. Again, I'm leaving out details, which I think you know why I'm leaving out details. This workaholism, or all these workaholics, little by little, led to various other sort of illnesses. And this is how Shaitan was able to dissuade and to deviate both the men who were away and the women who were in the community. Came to them separately and whispered to them in different manners. For the men, because of that workaholism, they were obviously denied and they were away from certain things that they needed. And women, in the same way, because their men were away, they were denied certain things that they needed as well too. And then what happened is, one of the things that Shaitan, besides those issues, what Shaitan was able to whisper, at least to the men, was that, hey, you're working so hard, you're getting all of this, why are you giving out to people as they're passing by? This is for you, this is for your own people. Well, what are you giving it to other people for? So when people come by, don't let them do all this. He said, people are taking advantage of you too. Again, he didn't come in the form of Shaitan, he came in the form of a wise old man, actually. He said, people are coming by, they're even taking advantage of you. They're taking extra behind your back, they're doing this, they're stealing from you. You guys just don't care. You're just so kind and generous. you're being manipulated, you're being abused. So what happened one time, again, all this whispering little by little, it affected them. Initially, they didn't act upon it, but little by little, it got into their psyche. One time, a person was passing by and was caught stealing their crops. Now, again, they had so much, it wouldn't have mattered to them, wasn't a big deal, but because that shaitani whisper had gotten to them, then the men, again, who had been away for so long and all these other issues, when they took this person, they said, okay, now we have to punish them. Now, again, I have to leave out details, but the type of punishment that started out was shaitan's suggestion about what they should do to this individual. All of this stemming from what? They had enough, they were doing okay, everything was working out just fine. Them getting materially greedy, being workaholics, spending time away from their family, spending time out of the house, led to all these issues for themselves and then for their families as well too. Till we get to, as we see in the Quran, how vile and vicious and disgusting and violent they had gotten. It starts off as something very, very small. Again, the best of the best, and this is how it happened. Again, the details, inshallah, we can maybe discuss some other time. I have to leave those out. But small little mistakes like these, this is what happened. So what the Sheikh Muhammad Taqi al-Majlisi is mentioning over here is that, look, all these different stories that are mentioned in the Quran, they all stem from very specific spiritual diseases. This is one example. There are other ways that, I think we can learn from this too. Not just from Quranic stories, but, simple stories that you and I may hear once in a while. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So there was a woman who was caught on the side of the road in a snowstorm, right? So there's snow there. Her car was stuck and she was unable to move. She was slamming on the gas and holding on the brakes and slamming and reversing, trying to do everything. The car wasn't going anywhere. She couldn't figure it out. Somebody passes by and sees, pulls over, guy gets out, and he'll, excuse me, miss, what's going on? She's like, you can see I can't move, it's because of the snow. It's like, no problem, let me tell you what to do. So he says, look, I'm going to start pushing. The minute I start pushing, that's when you can give it gas. Don't do it before, wait till I push. She says, okay, fine. So he waits, takes a few steps, pushes, and he says, okay, push, step on the gas. She does, nothing happens. It's like, she's not doing something right? Like I'm doing it, she's not pushing at the right time. Then another passerby comes and sees this one guy trying to push the car, lady slamming on the gas, the car's not going anywhere. He comes out and is asking the guy, what's going on? He said, look, I'm trying to help this lady out. I'm telling her what's going on, but she's not stepping on the gas properly. And he's like, no, you're pushing wrong. He's like, you can't just push from this way. You go to the corner of the right side, I'll push from the left side. And he tells the lady, he's like, wait, we're going to push it once, it's going to rock back. When we push it the second time, that's when you step on the gas. She's like, okay, fine. So, pushes once, lets it go back, pushes it again, both of them, steps on the gas, doesn't go anywhere. So, I'm like, what's going on? Third guy comes. He sees this, he's like, you guys have no idea what you're doing, right? He's like, let me tell you what to do. So, three guys there, trying to push it, he gets his own take on the scenario. He says, no, put it in reverse, we have to do it from the front. That's the best way to do it, because there's more power when you push the car, when you put it in reverse, right? So he tries that, it doesn't move. Fourth guy comes. He says, hold on a second. I know exactly what we need to do. He gives his own take on it. He's like, now we have enough, and now let's push it. So they get ready to push. 1, 2, 3, push, and the car begins to take off. Finally, like, this fourth guy, he's the one who got it right, thank God. As the lady's driving away, she's thinking to herself, like, I wonder if I should tell them that I figured out that the parking brake was up. So, there's a few different things to focus on in the story. One is the immediate person who actually asked for help. If that person knew what they were doing, if they understood the problem, then they would have mentioned these types of things to the individual they're asking for help, right? Sometimes we can't think of those things ourselves too. We know like the symptom of the issue. We're like, okay, for this lady, she knows the car's not moving, but she doesn't know what variables and what elements to check, right? She's just like, look, it's not moving. It must be because of the snow. Nothing else is going to occur to her like that, right? A lot of us, we end up doing that too. We know that there's an issue, personally or in terms of the community or internationally. We see some problem or issue. We attribute it to what we think might be the issue, right? Like, oh, the issue in Iran happens to be this. Like, do you actually know the issues on the ground? Do you know exactly why they're doing this? Are you saying that the protests, for example, are happening because of this? Do you know what they're saying? If you can't read what's going on, if you don't know the actual words of the people who are leading these protests, if you don't know that there's outside influence, then you're not going to be able to judge the situation properly, right? It's not just for you to imagine and think what the situation probably could be. You should have some information there too. So sometimes you might see that there's an issue. We all know that what's going on is not ideal, definitely, but who is best suited to figure out what the actual problems are? And then of course we have the first guy or any of these guys coming in to help. Everybody assumes that they have the actual answer there too, right? So they see the same thing. What do? They see the car's not moving. Their assumption must be that the brake is down, the parking brake is down. So they give their own take on what the issue could be, right? And everybody's, again, you see each subsequent guy is like, no, push it this way, or hold it this way, or do this, do that. They're all giving all this random bits of advice, but if they had to just check the parking brake, then it all would have been solved right away. So no matter, sometimes too many people coming in messes things up too, right? They say too many cooks in the kitchen makes your food extra salty, right? There's a whole, every language has that sort of saying. Everybody comes in and thinks there's not enough salt, and they all come in and they dump it in together. And, I've talked about that before too, where people come and love to offer community advice, right? They come from the outside, from inside, wherever. Everybody's got their own 2 cents, not 2 cents. Everybody's offering millions of dollars of advice, basically, right? They're all coming in and saying this, they should do this, what about this, what about this? Like, look, I think the people who need to handle it are handling it. I think the people who have an idea of what needs to go on, they're getting involved in it. Or maybe the person themselves should humble themselves and say, look, maybe you don't know all the variables. Maybe you're not thinking about it in the purely Islamic perspective. Maybe you don't know everything that's there. Right? And I've talked about this many times before. A lot of times when people bring up the idea of unity, which I've heard so many times, like I've told you, I'm sick of the word, is that do you actually know what the word wahda and unity means in Islam? What does it actually mean? What does these concepts actually mean? Is it your own interpretation of what it could mean? Like, do you have your own idea? Do you think you know what the problem is? If you think you know what the problem is, then you're going to offer your own solution. But there's an assumption that you're making that you know what the problem is, and then therefore you're going to know what the solution is. That may not be the case. Sometimes we need to make sure that we're hearing the proper thing. If you cannot look at all the variables, you're not in that position, you can't do that research, if you're not that person that can judge and adjudicate properly, then the best thing is silence, just to stay out of it. There's no reason to get involved. Everybody wants to. You can make dua, fine. You can pray. But to everybody, just to get involved all the time and to offer, sometimes it actually, again, makes the pot or the stew a little bit too salty. Or in our situation, a little too oily, right? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The problem is, over here, it's jahl murakkab, right? It's this compound ignorance. And the compound ignorance is the fact that there's arrogance coupled with the ignorance. Is a lot of people, everybody knows a little bit, right? Nobody's completely jahil. We all know a little bit of stuff, right? But it's the compoundness, the arrogance that comes in when somebody thinks that they're the exception to the rule, right? So in this story, every single guy that came in thought that they knew something the other guys didn't, or that the driver didn't. Like, no, you're doing this wrong. No, this is what you're doing. Everybody thinks that they're the exception to the rule. When the Quran says, lan tabdila, right? There is no change in Allah's sunnah. The same issues that happened then when people were workaholics, or we see in other groups when people tried to abuse the message of Islam that was brought down from the first prophet all the way down, when they start to adjust things to their own needs, or as we mentioned right last Thursday, when people mess with the initial sort of cultural supremacy of Islam and start to suit it to their own needs, this is going to filter and make Islam seem deficient then. So everybody thinks that they're an exception to the rule, that no, when I'm doing it, it's okay, it doesn't affect me. Right? If somebody else, if another community, another center does this thing, whatever. If I do it, it's okay. Well, that's not the way it works. When there is a spiritual illness, it's going to affect everybody. Sometimes it might affect you in a small way, maybe it'll affect you in a large way, but a spiritual illness is a spiritual illness at the end of the day, right? And I hear this a lot about various different diseases too, right? When you have an issue of, let's say, gambling. Right? Gambling, everybody might say, it's okay, I know when to stop. That's not a big deal. How do you know how it's going to affect you? And now every single, these motivational speakers, all these neurologists, who are coming on all these podcasts, all they're talking about right now is the issues that we're facing in the modern era is the problem of dopamine, right? Everybody is hyper addicted to these quick dopamine releases in whatever way possible. There's so many different ways that we're getting it, right? Obviously, the cliche is social media. We're getting it there. But it's interesting, kind of a side note, it's even applicable to the way that we engage in our Islamic research or our Islamic knowledge building. Is that everybody wants a quick solution too, right? We maybe have a lack or deficiency in our spiritual dopamine, right, or our spiritual recharging. And everybody is like, you know what? Give me a quick little 60-second video so I can get recharged. Like, look, Islam doesn't work like that. You don't just get a little, recharge and then you understand everything there too. I need a quick little 1-minute video, and then from that 1-minute video, then I'm now an expert in Islam and I can go and tell everybody else. Like, it doesn't work like that. Not a 1-minute video, not a 5-minute video, not a 1-hour lecture, not a series of 10 lectures, not even sitting beside the member for 30, 40, 50 years listening to Majalis is qualifies somebody to do all this stuff too. There's a lot there. And some people might say, yeah, you have to go to Hawza. That makes you qualified. No, I'll be the first to say, many who go to Hawza still don't have those qualifications, right? Because when they go there, they do the bare minimum, which is fine. It's good. They can be motivational speakers. But to do the deep research, that takes a little bit more effort, right? There's a difference between somebody who's a muballigh, just comes and shares information, and a muhaqqiq, somebody who's actual research, who does tahqiq, that they can go and dissect a topic from all different levels. People dissect it, or at least they use that word a lot, doesn't mean they're actually doing it properly, right? As we've seen many times. The ability to address a topic from multiple angles is not an easy thing to do. You have to know all the sources, all the different opinions, what books to look in, the resources that are available, multiple languages. This is not, again, a quick fix for anybody. So those who are truly interested in spiritual, intellectual growth, there's a lot that we have to get into. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So don't think of ourselves as the exception, right? Individually, I'm not an exception. The same sunnah that Allah has done for other communities, the same way other individuals have failed, the other way people, we saw, this is one of the reasons we mentioned the story of the Tawabin. Those same Shi'as who were with the Imams in the beginning, then abandoned Imam Hussein, same exact failure. We need to learn from the same mistakes they were making. One of them is a faqih, somebody who knows the fiqh, but didn't apply it properly. And somebody else who knows their dunya, their politics well, as in Mukhtar, but he's not able to understand the Islamic perspective properly. Although inshallah, maybe next Muharram we'll analyze that a bit more. And all these other followers are just blindly going one way or the other, one way or the other. When our poor Imam is left gharib in Medina, just sitting there with no followers. The source of all knowledge is there, and people are running off into all these different other movements. I keep hearing this all the time from people who want to address all these issues that happen. Say, well, nobody else is addressing it, so I have to speak about it. Nobody else is calling out the oppression, so I have to call it out. Nobody else is educating and enlightening, so I have to do that. Number one, who picked you? Did you pick yourself? Okay, if you picked yourself, what gave you the criteria to pick yourself? Even in the Hawza, in terms of the sunnah that we follow, somebody to be a speaker, usually they need the ijazat of their teacher to be able to go and speak in the first place. And this is a classical system that's always been there, because people say, how do I know what speakers and scholars to listen to? Like, you should ask them, which teacher, which scholar gave you permission in the first place? And a lot of them may or may not do that, or they may be a little offended when you start asking about these things. Where did you study? What books did you study? How long were you there? Who were your teachers? If somebody doesn't like this line of questioning, that should raise a red flag for you. Especially because pretty soon what you end up finding out from a lot of these celebrities is that they didn't spend any time there at all. Or maybe they did their Farsi or their Arabic and they left right away. And then they went to the street, the bazaar, they bought one of these things, because you can buy it there, right? You can buy this, you can buy anything. It's actually fairly cheap too. Well, it depends. You get the custom tailored one, it's a bit more expensive, but they have the ones hanging off the rack and you can get those too. You can buy all that stuff. Unfortunately, we have a few like that. And they go and they start speaking and they're called everywhere. These are the ones who, have a very specific price point that they ask for. They have a lot of this going on, unfortunately. But they think they're the exception. Well, I have to speak about issues that nobody else is addressing. It's like, hold on. How do you know that there's no other ulama, qualified ulama, addressing the issue you're talking about? Are you actually looking hard enough or not? The same way Islamophobes, they say, where's all the moderate Muslims speaking against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and Daesh and all this? Where's the moderate voices? We laugh, us Sunnis and Shias were laughing at them, saying, all of us are like that. You're looking at, this tiny little group of Salafis, whatever, or these small group of Wahhabi Salafis in one area, because technically not even all Wahhabis and Salafis are like that too, but that's another discussion. This one small group that you're focusing on because of your own media, and you're asking where the voice is. Well, yeah, if you're just going to watch Fox News or Voice of America or all these things, you're only going to get one side of it, obviously, right? And whether you're liberal or conservative doesn't matter. You're only just living in, you have this tunnel vision. That's what happens. Sometimes for Islamic issues, the same thing happens to us too. With the Iran issue, it's clear that's what's happening. Most people do not know that, again, these protests, I just actually found this out myself, that the protests that are happening right now, the amount of people protesting, meaning the ones who are against the hijab law or anti-government, whatever, it's less than the previous protests that happened in 2019. The ones in 2019 that happened for economic reasons, and the ones that happened before with the Green Movement, those had more supporters than this protest does right now. But who is the megaphone over here? You guys all know who the megaphone is over here. So you have to be able to have the sort of insight to be aware of these sort of issues. Khair, I'm going to go on too much. Let me stop there. Again, quickly summarize. So what we wanted to talk about today was this idea from the Prophet mentioning a truly happy person, a wise person, a fortunate one who's somebody who can take lessons from every single place, from anybody and everywhere. When we see all these different issues happening now and in the past, we can learn from them. We should be able to pick up lessons and say, hey, this community, where let's say they went from one building to another, or they broke off from another center, or they had various issues, this is what they had gone through. We need to make sure we're not going to make the same mistakes as they did. That's all you have to do. And one interesting point that I also wanted to mention, besides the point of arrogance, right? Don't think you're exceptional. One point that Ayatollah Khamenei, Hafidhahullah, mentions, because he has a commentary in this hadith too, but I'll just mention one point, is he said that learn from others' misfortunes. Don't celebrate their misfortunes. Meaning, when you see somebody going through, a mu'min or Muslims going through something difficult, don't be happy because of that. When you see bad news for people that you may disagree with, you may not like, don't be happy at that. He said you should learn what led them to that perspective. Why did this happen to them? Why is it that this apparent issue is going on in their life? I need to make sure I'm not there. You and I can send la'nat all day, all night on Yazid and Shimr and all these individuals, all we want. We need to make sure that those same qualities are not manifested in us. And that can be very, 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 very easy. So you can say Yazid, you can say Shimr, which we push off on one thing. The reason we talked about the Tawabin is because we might see ourselves as those individuals. One day being with the Imam, and the next day completely abandoning him. So may Allah protect us from that, inshallah. Let's move on to the Slido quiz now. If you can recite A, Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. One more Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay, so we have student, Koja, specialists, Muhajir, SSMP, #learning, RJ, HIC, number one, Zahra Ali. We'll wait for maybe a few more and then we'll start, inshallah. Bande Khuda. Hasan with 2 S's. And TJ just joined, I think. Okay, I think that's good. I think we can get started, inshallah. Okay, Bismillah. In the third and fourth rak'ah, you must recite either Surah Al-Fatiha or Tasbihat Al-Arba 3 times. True or false? In the third and fourth rak'ah, you must recite either Fatiha or Tasbihat Al-Arba 3 times. Is this true or false? Sorry. This is, according to Ayatul Sistani, this is false. So you have a choice between Tasbihat Al-Arba or Fatiha. That's true. The problem here is the Tasbihat Al-Arba. What's wajib is 1 time, not 3 times. 3 times is recommended. 5 times is better. 7 times you can do as, and some say odd numbers. But 3 times is not the bare minimum. 1 is the bare minimum, right? So you can do 1 Tasbihat Al-Arba, and then that'll be enough for the third and fourth rak'ah. Rasulullah says that true happiness comes from what? Ibadah, tazkiyah, taking lessons from others, or giving charity when you don't have much. Where does sa'ada, How has somebody become Saeed? Is it from worship, self-purification, from taking mu'idha and lessons from other things and other people? Or is it when you give sadaqah, when you yourself might be a faqir? Come on, man, this was the whole subject of taking lessons from others. I guess you didn't take a lesson from tonight's speech, huh? 50%. Not bad. According to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, ubudiyya is a gem, a jawhar. And its core essence is what? Taqwa, good akhlaq, rububiyya, or uluhiyya. What is true slavery or servitude? What is it? Its core essence comes from what? This is a hadith we talked about last week. Oh boy. Ya Allah. We said, ubudiyya, jawhar, kunhuha, its essence, its core is rububiyya. It's being, understanding that Allah is the Rabb, that He's the perfect nurturer. Oh God, this is bad, man. Now I have to take lessons from this. Last question. Saponification is a process used to produce what? Tree sap, soap, soil, or a gullible person? Saponification. Is it the obvious answers or a not so obvious one? Okay. So a little confusing, but yeah, it's actually the process of making, it's a chemical word in chemistry used, right? Where, I don't know what you do, the process that's used there, but yeah, the whole point is you get soap. I think from fats or oils or something like that. Okay, Koja, good job. Doing your people proud, 4 out of 4. In a minute and 1 second. The 3, Muhajir, 3 out of 4, but maybe you need to do Hijrah to the right answer next time. HIC number 1, Jamaat, well, you're not the number 1 questioner, unfortunately. Specialist, 2 out of 4, and TJ also 2 out of 4. So this was not a great quiz. Inshallah, I'll have to try again with some of these things. Okay, we will see you. I know there's a program tomorrow night, inshallah. We'll see you then. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahli baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Okay, so before we move for Ziyarat, I think you guys saw in the newsletter and the announcements that there was this an halal raffle that was going around, where there was these chocolate bars that were given out, right? And there was different facts that were put on there, and we are going to do the drawing right now, inshallah. We'll see who the winner is, and then hopefully the winner will come up here if they're present, because if you're not present, then you won't win, right? And then
You'll go for the next person.
yeah. Oh, me? Okay, let's see. Okay, so first name is Ali Abid Qasim. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajal. Congratulations. Okay, so now, yeah. So some of the facts that you learned, can I give him this mic? Yeah? I don't want to give him, I think there's going to be feedback, yeah. There you go. You can share some of the facts that you remembered.
So a few facts I had seen was, the first one was Imam Jafar Sadiq spent 31 years of his life with his father, and there's this one where the Prophet was given the name the truthful, because he was actually truthful to the people, and yeah.
That's good. 2 is good. Thank you very much. Okay, this for him. Hasan, congratulations. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. That's it? No. Okay, Congratulations, and now we will go for Ziyarat. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توأ وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله، السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله، السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله، السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله، السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله، السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا وارث علي أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام ولي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى، السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها، وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين، وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الحادي المهدي، وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولد كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والأروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياؤه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن، بشراء ديني وقواتيم عملي وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباء. السلام عليكم يا أسفياء الله ووداء. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصر. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله بأبي أنتم وأمي. تبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل عباس بن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوسيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لك أن نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زيد فيه غير من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل، والحقق الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولى وابن مولى. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلطان أبو الحسن مولانا علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الأصل والزمان سيدي الأمان الأمان الأمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته.